Welcome to the AMUG special episode of AM Infocast. As a part of this episode, it is our great pleasure interacting with Bruce Bradshaw, Chief Marketing Officer at 6K. Join me in this conversation where Bruce shares his perspective of how additive manufacturing has evolved in the past decade, key trends in metal powders for additive manufacturing, recent initiatives and future plans at 6K, and his personal experience of being part of the AMUG show now for more than a decade. Bruce, great to have you on AM Infocast, and thank you for joining us this morning for this podcast.
Happy to be here. It's great. Thanks very much for having me.
Great. So, additive manufacturing has evolved over the years, and over the past few years, what key trends are you observing in the additive manufacturing metal powder segment as we enter 2024?
So, much like the other parts of additive manufacturing, you're starting to see it move to serial production. Early on, metal additive was a prototyping, right? We were doing parts, seeing if it functions, or maybe one-off parts for special circumstances. But now we're starting to see it actually move into serial production. Obviously, there's plenty of stories, public stories out there, the fuel nozzle and others. But you also are seeing some companies, iconic brands that we all know, starting to talk about incorporating metal additive into their real production process for high volume. So I think it's on the cusp of being real. It's going from a niche market, if you will, to understood, and I say that with a little bit of cautious optimism. I wouldn't call it mature yet because there's a long way to go before we're mature, but it is definitely getting way beyond niche and it's becoming real. And I think we're going to see over the next few years a bunch of companies that we all know and love start to incorporate metal additive into their production processes. The other thing I'll talk about is the type of metals that are available. At 6K Additive, we pride ourselves on sustainability clearly, but also the breadth of materials. And I can get more into that as we get into the podcast, but we're getting a lot of customers and end users connecting with us for refractory metals, copper, things like that. So I think the increase in additional materials, I think, is a trend that we're going to see in the future.
No, I definitely look forward to those discussions in this podcast, but just diverting a little bit, you have been part of AMUG and the AMUG conference now for more than a decade. It's on world standards in terms of AM events across the globe. What's your personal experience with AMUG and your expectations for this year?
Yeah, I mean, there's clearly a lot of people, part of the AMUG community, that have been there before me, but mine actually started in the 2007, 2008 timeframe. I was with Objet, which is one of the two companies that formed the current Stratasys, an Israeli-based company. In Objet, so myself and Guy Bordeaux, actually, from DSM Somos, were the first two folks that actually were exhibitors back then. So there were no exhibitors prior to that. It was just a conference. And so we were the first two. We were the first two sponsors. And it was in a side room, and we brought our printer, and it was actually pretty cool because it hadn't been experienced. And clearly the event itself has grown tremendously. Back then, actually, the name of it was 3D SUG, 3D Systems Users Group. And, talking to Tom and others, I like to think that I had a little bit of influence on the name change because it's much beyond 3D Systems at that point. And so that's when I first started. But for me, it's been a consistent, tremendous value to users. The combination of hands-on events that they do, as well as the sessions, and then clearly for the exhibitors, being able to connect with so many end users at a very deep level. This is not a surface level discussion with folks. You're talking technical issues. You're talking about applications. You're talking about how they're utilizing their machines, and then also just the bonding part of it. It's a tremendous event. It has value across the board, and it's interesting. I'm curious to see how this year is going to be. The structure for exhibitors is changed, so that should be an interesting twist. And I think in the end it'll be good. And also there's an extra night of exhibitors. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But in general, it's a tremendous event. The other part that I'll just toss in, it's always fun to see who the next dynos are, right? To see who the industry icons are that we can embrace. So it's a fun event.
No, and AMUG is sort of a reference point, because there's been a lot of negativity towards the last of India about additive manufacturing as overall. But if you see where it's come from, when it was what you mentioned about maybe two companies, to see what is it today, it clearly shows that there has been a growth in the industry and there has been a transition. Of course, it may not have been as big as it was projected, but there surely has been growth in the last.
Yeah, and I tend to discount a little bit the noise and the politics surrounding it. I think, the black eye, that, if you call it a black eye, that additive has experienced in the last 12 months relates to the financial markets and companies maybe jumping the gun on going public before they should have, before their company's ready. The whole mergers and acquisitions discussions, all of that stuff is overshadowing what I think are real application uses and companies actually benefiting from additive. So, from a financial perspective, yes, it probably hasn't grown the way we want it to. The companies have not yielded the profits they want for shareholders. But I know, just being entrenched in the marketplace with customers, it provides real value for customers, and it's growing. And again, as you pointed out, it may not be at the pace that the analysts wanted to or have predicted, but it's at a steady incline, and I think will continue that way.
Yeah, and with the same background, can you talk us through some of your recent collaborations or projects which are allowing you to advance the sustainable production of metal powders and also promote circular economy in this sphere of additive manufacturing?
Yeah, we as a company have a few different examples I can talk about. The most recent is, I'm not sure if you've seen this, but we were awarded a $23.4 million Department of Defense grant award for upcycling materials. So it's a 3-year project. It'll help expand our facilities, but it's basically allowing us to take components out of the military depot. So aircraft parts that have been on World War II aircrafts or tanks and things along those lines that have critical materials, nickel and titanium, that we'll be able to actually break down into milled material, put through our Unimelt process, and create back into additive manufacturing powder. It's a huge thing. So that's obviously a circular economy, if you will, and opens up a lot of options for producing material inside the United States, and we could replicate this in other countries as well, but we're obviously, being US based, we're starting here. The other one I'll talk about is a company called SMR, a relationship that we have. It's a company based in Australia. It's a little morbid, but they actually are taking components, medical implants from people that pass away. And so there's thousands of tons of material that they collect back. And actually, we have a partnership with them. We're recycling those components back into medical implant components with them. So it's recycling titanium and components like that. That's a huge thing. And they're expanding globally. So that's, again, when we talk about cradle to grave, a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing. Yeah, this is truly cradle to grave. So another one I'll talk about is a partnership we have with MPW. So Metal Powder Works, where they actually have the ability to mill copper, and we're actually able to turn that into spherical powder to expand the copper business. And then Agile, being a space company, again, one of the in talking to them, and I think they talk about it publicly, one of the reasons they came to us is because of our ability to upcycle titanium and nickel and components like that. The last two, and I'll just touch on real quick, 3D Systems, we're the preferred supplier for them for tungsten, and then the preferred supplier for 718 for Cumberland additive. So there's lots of examples that we're seeing, and I could go on and on for this, but there's plenty of folks that are coming to us because of our ability to upcycle materials in a sustainable way.
That really makes, a lot of substance in terms of what's it's going in the positive direction. With that, I'll just pause for a bit. I just need to attend to something. I'll just get back to the next question. I'll just
take your time, no problem. I can hear somebody in the back.
Yeah. So based on these different collaborations you're going about and the scale you're looking at your business going forward, are there any specific initiatives or certifications which you're looking at that highlight your commitment to sustainable practices and link back to your production scaling up?
Yeah, actually, there's several on that front. First, if you just look at the process that we make, I'll just take two minutes. I'll try to be brief. How we're a little different. The way powder is manufactured, the most common way is with atomization. So you take a wire, an ingot, you put it through a high heat, you throw a lot of gas at it, the particles bash together, and you get this random distribution of particles, of which 20 to 30% is really in the window of usable powder that you want for additive manufacturing. The rest is scrap. So they don't use sustainable sources, and they create waste. Our process is actually quite a bit different. We actually take scrap material, so CNC shavings, millings, turnings, used powder, failed builds. We mill them down to size. So if we want 15 to 45 or 20 to 63, whatever size we want, we actually mill it down to that size. So we have an angular powder or an angular feedstock that we then put through the process with a third of the gas, a third of the energy, and we end up with 100% yield. So we start with waste or scrap material and we create no waste. So our process is highly efficient from a sustainability standpoint, to the point where we actually went to a third-party company called Foresight Management to do a life cycle assessment on our technology versus atomization. And it found for nickel that we utilize 92% less energy, and we create 92% less carbon emissions than atomization for nickel. And then for titanium, it's like 77 and 78. And so this is a third-party company doing the assessment on us, not us pounding our chest. This is just reality, which is fantastic. So we have those things to point to. And then we actually went to another third-party company called SCS Global, which did a certification for us that the material coming from our facility is up more than 95% recycled content. So between the LCA, our process, and what we do with SCS, there's lots of proof points for us on how we're much more sustainable than the incumbents.
And that's a very important trend, I think, which is important for AM to kind of walk the talk in a way. So, making it more realistic in terms of how you are, portraying yourself as well, backed by good evidence. I think that's very
and let me add just two things, actually. One of the things that we're seeing a lot more companies actually coming to us because we're sustainable. And we didn't think that we thought it was a benefit, but we didn't feel it was going to have the impact that it has. There's so many companies now that have carbon initiatives that using a sustainable feedstock for them is a huge benefit. The other thing is there's a lot of companies that are buying carbon offsets to make themselves more carbon neutral. With us, we're actually producing a calculator that will allow companies to, just simply by using our powder, can produce or can assign a value associated with that, offsetting the carbon offsets that they will no longer need to buy. So it goes beyond just the technical folks. It's the sustainability folks and the ESG folks in their organizations that are looking to buy fewer carbon offsets. Simply by using our material, they'll be able to do that, and we'll help them quantify that this year.
And moving forward, can you elaborate on specific industries with respect to metal powders where 6K Additives sees significant growth potential for you in this year or this year and beyond?
Yeah, and there's obviously the vertical markets, and I've touched on a few, but like aerospace, the aerospace manufacturing market, they're clearly one of the verticals that's taking advantage of additive. Again, I referenced the fuel nozzle. There's a bunch of other examples, and that continues to expand quite a bit. And those companies have reached out to us, and we're actually in qualification with a bunch of them, and actually have publicly talked about a company like Agile, which is in the space market, where we've done a webinar with them. They've certified our material to use in their process. And then the other thing that's interesting that we didn't think was going to happen, there are a lot of the bigger aerospace companies that are coming to us saying, listen, we have all of this scrap material in the form of shavings and turnings and millings that we know is certified material because we bought it for our subtractive side. How can we enter into an agreement with you to actually kind of create somewhat of a circular economy? So do they always end up with the same exact chip that went into our process? Does that end up going back to them? No, but we can certify our process. So there's a lot of companies in the in the aerospace side that's actually coming to us because we have the ability to consume their scrap material and give it back to them in a circular way. Obviously, medical is another one I referenced, SRS Medical. We're seeing lots of organizations in the medical market coming to us for two things. Not only the sustainability benefits for materials like titanium, but doing additional new materials like tungsten is a material that you wouldn't think is something that would show up in medical implants, but there's some components for that, and the fact that we can actually do that at scale is huge. And then there's automotive. So the fact that people have turned the corner on being able to do copper within laser powder bed fusion has opened up I think the automotive market in a different way than it has been in the past. So if you look at it, it's kind of the sustainability metrics that we can offer, but also the breadth of opening up the breadth of materials for these organizations. So those are the four verticals, but there are a lot of companies coming to us because they want new materials. Not only do they want refractories, but they want tungsten rhenium as a material. Very few companies can actually produce tungsten rhenium because they can't find an ingot or a wire to do it on their end. With us, because we can mechanically mill them together ahead of time, we can actually produce it in the system. So we're a bit unique in that way. So we can offer materials that others can't.
I think that sounds good. I think that keeps a good range of opportunity for where 6K additive can grow into. I think that's
no doubt,
pretty exciting for you next few years. Circling back to AMUG, we said it's a great event for the industry as a reference point. Now, what are the key drivers for you as a company to be an active supporter of this event? Can you enlist some of them?
Yeah, and again, it starts with our customers. We do encourage our customers to participate. It's again, my own personal experience. Leslie Frost, who's on my team, has been on the board. We've been at 6K Additive since we've been formed as an organization. We've been part of AMUG, so we're big supporters of it. But we see the value in it, and so we encourage our customers because we understand the value that collaboration, not just with the vendors, but company to company. So we encourage them, and then we're also encouraging them to speak and share their stories of how they're benefiting from 6K Additive, how they're benefiting from additive and other vendors. We're a gold sponsor, have been, will continue to be, find huge value in it, and for us, you always want new leads, but it's about relationships, being able to pick up the phone and talk to somebody. They may not be buying stuff from us today, but they can offer some technical advice or whatever the circumstances are. So it's interesting. You hear about new applications that people are creating. So it's a very, very unique event. And then obviously the last part for me, being the person responsible for marketing for 6K Additive, the branding and thought leadership that we can offer and benefits we get from being at AMUG. We talk about this all the time. It's at 6K on our battery side and on the additive side. We look at events as trade shows and conferences. And AMUG is not a trade show. It is a conference that you learn from. And it has the benefit of having a show floor for a few days, and that's great. But the learnings that you get from the sessions and what happens there is just so unique. And then the collaboration you get and the openness that you get from the users there is just, you can't get it at any other event in additive. It's just so unique. So we encourage our customers to be there. We're there. Our executive leadership team, they're there. It's a tremendous event. And, we can talk about it all you want, but you really don't understand the benefit until you actually walk through the doors.
No, it really makes sense, and that is the value which AMUG creates for the community, and I can definitely vouch for the openness in terms of versus other events, because we organize our own events here in India. We've been to other events across the world, and it's definitely the openness of users to share their experiences for others to grow. I think that's something which is very useful for the whole industry to grow. So I think it's pretty valid point to talk about the event. And Bruce, thanks for joining us today on this podcast and sharing with us about the journey of 6K and where it's headed in the next few years. And we wish you luck with the same.
We appreciate it. It's been fun, and I love talking about the industry. I love talking about AMUG, and as you can tell, I'm passionate, but also the company's passionate about AMUG and the industry. So good luck to everybody in 2024, and we'll see people at AMUG in March.
Yeah, see you at AMUG.